Hello, Keith.
How are you?
Yes. Is, I know we don't have it on this agenda, is sprinklers? Yes. A request back in for there. Yeah, even though we said no.
They're kind
You
of,
you actually, say no? You continued it,
Oh, where did
and then.
I got out of a liquor.
So they are applying for, you'll see them on the seventh April, and they're applying for a hotel license, so it's please and it's in bar in their rooms.
Like a minutes, yes.
Correct. Yes.
you have 45 seconds.
Yeah, no big deal.
Having a whole.
Yeah.
Damn you. Don't breathe on us. Here, put this over your face. Jesus Christ. Well, if it isn't Mona. How are you?
Today is a good day for
We walked Dickens and Lewis Farm today. Spectacular.
So the only one that has for us, that one up on the hill, that's the house, however, it's Chris Plain, other than no one else can come down there.
There's a lot of deer on
If you go.
Roan.
You know, McDonald's Road?
Yeah.
So, Kansas right above, it. You go down to that back corner of that property, there's a pond about 35 feet down.
Oh, is there?
Because we cut a couple trees down near this property for the view, and I look down there, it's amazing how deep it is. I mean, it's
So funny.
It's all brush,
Yeah.
it goes on, and then when I take drops, it goes like this.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah. And two.
I have a daughter like this. I have a daughter like that.
So maybe she.
That is really funny.
They shut the door.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You can unfriend all of my friends, maybe not comment, but like. You're on a probationary.
That's really funny. Oh, really? Yeah. Good, how are you today?
Like, well, like, and when they, kind of. I think so.
What keeps you going back?
So. Because I don't.
You know,
Because when they.
we were talking with somebody, I think it was over the following year. 1661 this weekend had rented like 23 rooms.
Wait a minute. What city is on that?
Yeah, and I was, I wonder whether, you know, with hotel rooms going for as much as they are. And I can't remember what it was, but it was a daily. So like, I had a wonderful burger. You know, I mean, It would be a good time to come for a vacation, you know? Millie, are you finally ready? Okay. Oh, really? Molly's duck's fault. Hello, everybody. Call this meeting of the New Shoreham Town Council to order. Today's Wednesday, March 19th, 2025. It is 6:31. Our first order of business is a personnel matter for closed session. Can I have a motion to go into closed session, please?
So moved.
There's a second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We're now in closed session. Hey, Polly, do I have to convene the Board of License Commissioners?
Yes, you do.
That's what I thought. Hey, David, how are you? Terrific, thank you.
Who's that?
I think that's the town plan. Hey, Paul, how are you? Hey, Karen. Hello, Jess. Good, how are you today?
I can.
Yes, I did. Did I not respond to that? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yes, you did. I did, absolutely. Oh, okay. Thank you. Hello, everybody.
I was not even, I've watched it on Zoom. When you're lobbyist for. One thing that was not exactly accurate, Newport collects $20 a person.
Oh, is that right?
And then they get that rebate.
Huh. On cruise ships. Yeah,
If they go through there, they don't have to pay.
right, right, right. Give me a read. It's 12. It's 12 when you come and I'll give you 2 if you get. Goodness. Hello, everybody. Just to clear up the closed session business, we began the meeting with a closed session. No votes were taken. Can I have a motion to seal the minutes, please?
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor indicate by
Aye.
saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. First order of business is to convene the Board of License Commissioners. I convene us at 7:04. We have 2 items related to the same thing, same application. The first is to discuss and act on a request for relief from On Island Entertainment, doing business as Weatherby's under New Shoreham Liquor License Rules and Regulations, Section 2E. This is a bit, we don't do this very frequently. Oh, is Millie in? Because the way that our ordinance works, we only do liquor permits. I think they have to be in like during 2 weeks in September, Paul, something like that. Millie would know. And in order to be considered outside of that normal time period, you have to request that the town council grant relief. And have to demonstrate that you meet a couple of provisions under the ordinance. If you haven't seen this on Clerk Base, it's actually worth taking a look at because it's how our ordinances work. The basis for providing relief is providing compelling evidence that 1, any non-compliance with the regulation or rule is due to mistake, inadvertence, surprise, excusable neglect, and other just cause, and 2, that the community at large will benefit by the granting of this extraordinary relief. I just raise that because it's important. People watch this stuff and want to know what we're doing. So that's what we're doing tonight. Chris, do you want to come up and is our applicant, Chris Willie.
Green light is on.
So we would like to, open a restaurant at Letterty's at 35.
Mhm.
Timing of it be for in October.
Gotcha.
So
So is everything out of there? I'm just curious. Gotcha. The bar is still there? No, really? I haven't looked in the window, so I didn't know. Just the paintings and,
just
yeah. Yeah,
at the timing of it, when the license became available, waiting until the scheduled period of time.
right, sure. Right. Mm-hmm. And you want to just describe what you're gonna do? Actually, no, let's wait until item 3 to describe that. Go ahead. Well, for me, I think this meets both. I think the timing clearly didn't work, and it's not your fault. And for me anyway, I think the idea, given what we've lost with Old Island Pub, I think the idea of an additional year-round restaurant makes a great deal of sense.
Did get that letter, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Carefully considered it, and because those two entities don't exist, we decided to put forward an application. It's going to be restaurant, basically traditional pizzeria.
Any other questions for Chris?
Can I ask, are you talking about food service on the ground level and the first floor or just the ground level?
So the kitchen is on
The first floor.
the first floor, the service area. Service.
So kind of the way that Club Soda ran.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, when you say year round, do you think 7 days a week
We
Stop.
7 days a week lunch and dinner.
and then hours of operation?
Yeah. Probably 11 to 11. Yeah, 11 to 11. I think in our letter, we said we want to close by 11. We don't have any intent. This is going to be a restaurant that serves alcohol, not a bar that serves chips.
Food. Yeah.
That makes sense. Like, that's the model that we would.
Would someone like to make a motion to grant this relief and then we can discuss the permit?
I'll make the motion to grant the relief.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
All right,
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. So granting the relief, now we move on to, Millie, do I need to convene a public hearing separately?
Yes, please.
I would make a motion to convene a public hearing on this application.
so moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor indicate by saying
All
aye.
right,
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Public hearing is now open. So you want to just sort of like describe what you're going to do there in terms of food, et cetera, Chris?
So when I say traditional pizzeria, obviously pizza grinders are sandwiches. If you don't know what a grinder is, but it depends on where you're from.
They were grinders.
That'll be the focus. Stuff that's quick, easy. There will be fried food, but quick, easy, and affordable.
Mhm. The only written feedback that we got, I think, at least that I got, please correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but was one person who was concerned about the potential for noise there.
Right, in our letter of relief, I mentioned that we're very cognizant of that. I've sat where you guys were when there were some issues with the previous establishment there, which were corrected. We don't plan on having any outdoor entertainment. We don't plan on piping music outdoors. It's strictly going to be, the outdoor portion of it, which is, the backyard, and I think it butts Verna and Marguerite. We don't want to upset them.
That's wise.
So we're aware of noise,
Right.
believe me, very experienced with it.
And would it be part of your daily protocol to send someone out like beyond your footprint to pick up garbage that's,
We do that with our existing establishment, so.
I mean, there shouldn't technically be any beer bottles from your establishment outside the building.
No, I'm gonna adopt the same protocol we do with Captain Nick's, is nothing leaves the property. Meaning if you're not gonna walk outside with a drink. So, we're also gonna pay attention to our parking scenario. I know way back when John and Ed ran, there were some parking issues occasionally, so we're aware of that. It just needs to be, I think, a little more organized.
Just part of the letter said that the neighbors find beer bottles and other garbage on their property. So that, I mean, number one, that shouldn't have been happening. If they were from the bar, they shouldn't have been outside the bar. But I just want to make sure that you have that as a priority, which it sounds like you do.
And you're gonna be open year round once you do open?
Yeah.
So you're gonna compete against yourself? in this-
Well, that's why our closing time is at, 11 is we don't want to stay open past 11. And, it's a restaurant. So Nick's isn't necessarily, we're a bar that serves food. We have late night food. We go late night with that. We don't intend to do that with Weatherby's. So in a sense, you could say it's competition, but it's not. It's two different models.
I like the concept that that you'll be open year round and be serving food. The thing that's been problematic down there in general for noise and the neighbors and so forth. And I think in my eyes, it was always a bar that served food. And, whether it was whatever it might be, I like the approach that it's gonna be a restaurant that, will also serve liquor with it from that end of the focus. Millie, is there anything that, on the licenses that the time restriction can be put on them, or does the state will not allow that?
Could you repeat the question?
So in other words, with the liquor license, can it be like say a midnight or whatever, or is it preset?
There are limitations about the timing. So applying for the BV license, you can serve until 1 o'clock, 1 a.m.
Right, but there can be no restrictions placed on that.
Oh, that's probably a good question for your solicitor. James is here.
James?
Hi, how you doing? Yeah, I think you can limit the time frame where you serve alcohol. You just have to have reasons for that limitation. And of course, the applicant could appeal that, but you do have that power.
So would it cause any problems if we said 11 o'clock for closing or?
Well, we plan on closing at 11 anyway. If there's a mechanism, like what if, we're gonna be open year round. You remember like back and I've like, there used to be community event. We used to have the spaghetti dinner. We used to have the St. Patrick's Day fundraiser for the Lions Club and things like that. And I don't know why we don't do that anymore. And I would certainly like to entertain those things. So I can't say they would run past 11, but our goal isn't to certainly.
Probably
late.
better to just leave it
Yeah.
to the 1 o'clock. And then if there was were any issues, they can always be,
Well,
addressed again.
yeah, and this gets reviewed every year.
Yeah.
And every time we reapply, if there's, we go through any of the complaints. So if there is an issue that comes up or something that we can adjust, then we will, on the reapplication or the renewal.
Fair enough. Paul?
And I'm sensitive to the neighbors and I get that, and the whole argument come back that, you know, this was there and so forth. I think though, if I was a neighbor within that, within the proximity, I would welcome the direction of
I agree.
the restaurant aspect from there. Because it definitely is a change, coupled with the fact that, like you said, you don't want to compete with yourself, you don't need to from that end of it, so. That's the reason that I'm supportive of what I'm hearing.
Paul?
He's got his own
Yes.
green light. Chris and I have spoke about this.
Yeah.
When I first saw the application, and you know, one of the concerns of a lot of the neighborhoods, the biggest complaints that we have ever had from up there is the noise. And Chris and I talked about that. He said, you know, as he said, they don't have to plan on nothing outdoors, no music piped outdoors. And it's a restaurant first,
Right.
not a bar first. It's the restaurant first.
Mhm.
And you know, he's very on top of his stuff at Captain Nick's.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to be very on top of his stuff up there. So
Right.
I don't
Okay.
have any concerns about that being up there.
Thank you, Paul. It's very helpful. Any questions? Any public comment? We are in a public hearing. Come. Just identify yourself for the record if you don't
Hi,
mind.
my name is Jeffrey Bloom. I'm at 1254 Connecticut, which is directly across the street from the,
Yes.
from what was Club Soda. And I guess my comment is, I did read the letter that was in the record.
Yes.
And have been beer cans, beer bottles outside. There has been noise outside. My experience, though, is that didn't come from Club Soda.
Yeah.
Club Soda is in the High View, and the High View has been used for housing of
Interesting. Yeah.
people that, you know, work on the island in the summer. And when those guys get off shift, they don't have a backyard to go to. They hang out in the parking lot. Late into the night, they're drinking the beers. That's, to me, that's been the issue around there is, and I don't blame them. They work late, you know, and they're off shift and
Sure.
but it really hasn't been Club Soda in my experience. And I'm supportive of the idea of having a restaurant there. That's it.
Terrific. Thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead, Dave.
Hi, good evening. John Cullen. I live at 1123 Connecticut Ave, pretty much across the street from the High View. And I just have a couple of comments, and I guess a lot of them have to do with history, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. But historically, when there has been a bar operating in the High View, it has a pretty dramatic impact on our neighborhood. Not just me personally, but you know, just that impact, part of it is the traffic. We jokingly call Connecticut Ave the racetrack. At 4 o'clock every day, when there's been a bar there, the cars start screaming up and down the street. The other thing, which I think this is a good thing, but a lot of people walk to Club Soda. So at 1 o'clock in the morning, we have large groups of people walking down the street, having a great time. And I think they don't realize that they're in the middle of a residential neighborhood. And, you know, we have not been able to sleep with our windows open for a long time. And the last 6 months has been pretty nice. And it's been quiet. And I do think, and I'm trying to cover all my bases here, most of the disturbance in the neighborhood that I've experienced happens outside of Club Soda. It doesn't happen like inside the boundaries of that. It's people out in the street and it's cars but they're there because, and I shouldn't say Club Soda, I'm trying not to use that word or that phrase, but they're in the neighborhood because there's a bar there for people to go to. And if the council grants this license, we feel like we need some help. And I will say the police, they're very responsive when I call them. But typically, the police, from what I know, and obviously I don't work for the police department, they're parked down in the commercial district. They're out in front of Kittens and they're out in front of Nick's. There's no police parked in front of the Highview in general, because, and I know, understand they're stretched to the limit, but maybe if there was, and maybe if there was a stronger police presence, those people would behave themselves as they're walking home to wherever it is that they are. Litter is also, historically has been an issue. There's, every day I go and pick up beer cans and bottles and cups out in front of my house. And, you know, it's just, we've accepted that. I've lived there for 24 years and that's just kind of what came with the territory. But I think now we kind of have a chance to maybe chart new territory and move in a more positive direction. And if the council in its wisdom decides to grant this license, and it kind of feels like, I don't know, I feel a positive wave towards that. I do think Chris is a good businessman. And if you had to give the license to somebody, I'd rather have you give it to him because I feel like he's somebody that we can talk to and somebody that will be a good neighbor. This is speculation, but you know, in a perfect world, I'd say I'd love to not have a bar there. But if it's a restaurant and a bar, I don't know. I'm starting to go around in circles, but I just felt like
I think, I guess two things you point out about Chris, and your ability to, our ability to work with him, which I think is very positive. And also, I'm sure you've noticed a difference since Paul has been chief around visibility. And, you know, it strikes me that an ongoing conversation between you and Paul, or, you know, and you and Chris and Paul would really be important because, you know, in the idea is a good one, but I'd rather not come back to our liquor hearing and have, I don't think any of us, you know, want to say, Jesus, what the heck did you guys do? So, you know, I guess we'd appreciate if you guys have a willingness to, you know, to work together and keep communication open, that would be very helpful.
and it has been a lot to deal with like these last 24 years. But,
Yeah.
you know, like I say, sometimes the winds of change can be positive, and I guess all we can do is hope for the best. And like I say, I don't mean to knock the police. I know they're busy. And when I call, they're there within minutes. It's just, and if they're not going to be open till 1 a.m. That's a huge, those 2 hours are big
Yeah.
from 11 to 1.
Yeah.
There's different things going on at 1 a.m, I think, than there are at 11. So I guess that's all I have, and thank you. And good luck.
Terrific, John. Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, I just want to mention it's it's a good point to make about the Hy-Vee being housing, particularly for seasonal. So I think an element that might not have existed before was a good working relationship between the property owner and the leasee, which I have a pretty good working relationship with the property owner. So I think if we work together on that portion of it and try to just remind everybody that's there that they have neighbors and try to, you know, mitigate that factor in the
Yep.
future. I don't know if it's ever been attempted.
Who knows?
I wonder too, Chris, if you could work with the neighbors, make sure that they have a contact.
Sure.
Some like contact information for you. So if they had a problem, they could contact you. If they still felt like it wasn't resolved, they could contact the police. But, you know, I mean, that should probably apply to all establishments, right? You know, with your neighbors. It's just that in most areas, your neighbors are more commercial businesses. But more and more, you know, I mean, there's like places over on the other side of town where there's neighbors. And anyway, I'm just wondering if that couldn't help with the situation. Obviously, John can get in touch with you,
Yeah.
but I think, you know, if you could work with the other neighbors to make sure they knew how to get in touch with you.
Absolutely.
Anything further? Anything from the council? Is there a motion to grant this Class BV license to On Island Entertainment Management?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No, the ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I know, exactly. Can I have a motion to adjourn the public hearing, please?
Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed? No, the ayes have it. On to the town council agenda. Am I missing anything, Millie, before I jump ahead? Excellent. Public comment. Chris, good to see you. Identify yourself when you get to the mic, please.
Chris Blaine. I have a question for the council. This is the Block Island Times. And at the December 18th council meeting, council wants wall removed. You voted to initiate litigation. And it's 3 months later and the survey's been done and everything's been blessed. And it's almost an embarrassment now that it's gone on this long. I mean, this is well over a year. And it doesn't look like anything has happened at all. So my question is, how come nothing's happened?
We will put an update on our next agenda.
Okay, thank you.
We can't go back and forth. Anybody else? If not, item 5, consent agenda. I would like to point out just, there's an item in here, that is, received under correspondence on, from Mark McGuire requesting a warrant item for on a May 5th, 2025 financial town meeting to support. Can we book that separately on an agenda to actually have a discussion about that? I think we have to actually agenda it, not just as a consent item. And you know, I think we all appreciate the work that the Affordable Housing Board does. So I want to give it its due and its time. Yes, go ahead, Nancy.
Okay, I have just a couple of corrections on minutes. The March 3rd open page. Let's see. Page 2. Under correspondence that the Rhode Island PUC agreement with Interstate is for the fast ferry, when we're talking about the difference in price. It's for the traditional ferry. Wasn't the fast ferry. And then on page 3, when we're talking about Mr. Jeremiah reported that the DOT have not shared plans, he will modify the noted cost for the building. Just to clarify that from the salt storage, we're just more concerned with the building. Yeah, for the building. And under 7, we agreed that Ms. Land should put forth an application. I think we said for the Coast Guard station, right? So can you just add that?
Yes.
That's it.
I don't want to interrupt you. Thank you for picking those up. I really appreciate it.
Keith, I had one question on the,
Yeah.
on the fee schedule for the film and photo productions. And not that, just for curiosity, was there a fee? Is this new? Was there one, or is it lower, higher? Or?
That document and the fees have been in place since 2017, but it was never voted by the council. So we're just bringing it into compliance.
Very good.
Okay.
So we've been, okay, I won't even make the joke.
We're doing better going forward.
Yes.
Motion to approve the consent agenda except for I1. Right? It's the one you
No,
removed.
no, I didn't
Oh.
remove it. I wanted to notice it, but
Oh.
then put it on an agenda. Is there a second? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Discuss and act on board. We don't have any volunteers, but we have a good crowd tonight. We have a lot of vacancies. And would very much appreciate some of them, all of them important, but some of them especially important. Please take a look, et cetera. Item 7, continued public hearing to discuss and act on amendments to New Showrooms Ordinance, tent, trailer, and shipping container, Article 1, Section 111, general prohibitions. This was before us a month ago?
Mhm.
And I spent a lot of time on this.
Oh,
the
gosh,
past
yes.
Several weeks, just sort of thinking about it. I actually started I started out by saying, well, maybe it needs to be redrafted. And I was looking at it more closely over the last several days, and I don't think it needs a entire rewrite, in my opinion. I think it's actually pretty straightforward. I do have a couple of things that I might suggest. I don't know whether people have it in front of them. But, and I'm not sure, Karen, I'm glad you're here. I'm not sure where this would go, but, I think we should have, an exemption that basically says we're not including temporary structures that are used primarily for the protection of workers or customers from the weather. You know, a good example actually just left, but Block Island Fish Works, for example, when the sun's beating down there, they have a canopy of some sort, you know. The other one is to enable, I put this under, what would that be? Article 1, general 111 general prohibitions. Then if you move down, there's the exemption for livestock or other agricultural purposes is on trailers. I think that there are circumstances where you should be able to get a special permit from the town council, particularly for storage containers. And I'm thinking, like, if there's a really bad storm and the windows blow out of a store, and you have to, you know, do a renovation, you know, or, you know, what we have now at Harborside, where without one of those storage containers, Oddfellows would struggle to exist right now. You know, those seem to make sense to me, those exemptions. Anyway, those are my initial
So
thoughts.
let me just ask, so when you're talking about containers, that would be by permit only, but we would be talking about, would we want to put a length of time on that?
We certainly could. You know, it could be a special permit that's for 90 days, or, you know, go ahead. Millie wants to jump in because
Yeah.
I'm-
It's just that you have the provision under a special temporary permit to
Oh,
do
that's
just
under
that.
section. Okay,
Yeah, it's right. It allows you to cover that.
okay. Well,
I just, to go back to the first one
Strike
about
that.
the tents.
yeah,
So basically then you could leave a tent up all the time because it's either sunny or it's raining.
I know.
So, I mean, not to poke
No.
holes in it, but, so I did send out, this to a lot of different business owners just to make them aware of it. And one of them got back to me, a place that has previously had a little pop-up tent for a musician, to stay out of the sun, and the rain. And, they answered back to say that they were aware this was coming and they put in a permit with the historic district and building to put up a pergola.
Uh-huh.
So I wonder whether that might not be the more appropriate way to handle it, so that like, well, okay, you used Fishworks as an example, so I will too. That if they were to say, well, we want to have like a temporary wooden, or maybe not temporary, permanent wooden structure that's just a roofing similar to what Interstate has in Point Judith, let's say.
Or an awning or something like that.
Or an awning, which is allowed, right? Is it,
Yes.
am I correct that awning is allowed? Just wondering whether we could maybe have people switch to things that are permissible without.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I understand what you're trying to do,
Oh,
but I think that
absolutely.
we
It's,
create a loophole so big that
It's all a brainstorm.
yeah.
So then a motion would be in order possibly to refer this to committee now.
Refer what?
Committee?
We don't have committee.
I think that, I appreciate the work that the boards have done and Karen has done on this, but, I think we need more study on this. I mean, when I look at how many containers are around, it seems like we keep carving out for everyone who has a tent already. I think we need to figure out exactly what is the problem and what does we want to do, as opposed to putting this in and then we're boxed into the domino effect that we may not want. And I'll go back to the trailers and the shipping containers. Whether or not they will be grandfathered or not, if you go around, I was amazed at the number of them that are there. So the question is, should they be permitted? Should they not be permitted? Should they be screened? I just think there's more of a domino effect to this than I think we might realize. And it's not to say we shouldn't address it, but I don't want to end up with a whole bunch of legal challenges over it. I think we need to figure out exactly, I mean,
What would the legal challenges be?
a grandfathered, is it grandfathered?
I-
You know, and is it?
They're
is it-
temporary structures. How can they be grandfathered?
I don't think they're grandfathered.
So.
It's a difficult question to answer. And the reason is because you have many different setups of tents and storage containers. But generally speaking, I'll say this. The law is clear that when you change an ordinance, the general premise is that those structures that are in effect at the time of the change are grandfathered. So that's where this discussion is arising. However, there's another provision of the law that talks about nuisances. And this is Section 111 is a nuisance ordinance. There is a carve out on the grandfathering when you are prohibiting nuisances. So what does that mean? It means that a large number of tents, storage containers, things like that, that exist today, although the law changes, if you were to adopt this, they would not be grandfathered. Now, if you have one that is subject to a special temporary permit, which is something else that is on your agenda tonight, or you have a tent that maybe had a permit associated with it in the past, that would be a different scenario.
What determines the nuisance part as opposed to, is it just being there
We do.
equals a nuisance or?
Your ordinance does. So the council did when it adopted section 111, general prohibitions. If you read the first subsection, which talks about the overall intent of that section, it is a nuisance ordinance. So everything that's prohibited under section 111 is considered a nuisance by the town. That includes the things that we're talking about. So even if you were to regulate things going forward differently, if it's a nuisance and it's not allowed, it's still not allowed. It doesn't gain grandfathered status somehow.
Karen,
Sorry.
can
Go
I
ahead.
just,
Go ahead,
can
Nancy.
I just ask a question? On that issue of proving a nuisance, I mean, isn't it kind of awkward to be in the position ultimately of trying to prove a nuisance when someone can prove that a tent has been up in front of their store for 10 years?
No, if the ordinance has been clear that it was prohibited then and it's still prohibited, it's always been prohibited. It doesn't matter how long it's been there.
It doesn't matter that we didn't act on it at all.
No,
in that
it does
period
not
of
matter. A
time?
municipality does not
is not barred by that. Now, if we're talking about something else outside of a nuisance, that's a different ballgame. That's where that grandfathering, legal existing, we call it legal existing non-conforming, that's where that comes up.
So,
But
so my question is, so we have like, I'm gonna go to the containers, get these on. There's a lot of them that are around. And the question is, do they serve a purpose? Is the problem how you see them or whatever it might be? Is it something, I mean, there's a lot. I don't know if, I mean, I don't want to name them out here, but
Yeah.
there's quite a few, starting with the town itself. And the question is, I look at them and I say, well, they serve a useful purpose. Just like if I look at the bagel shop, a number of restaurants that have their and the Shockies and so forth, they have their coolers outside, but they're fenced in, so they're screened. So my question is, should we look through this and say, what is it we want? Do we want them all gone, or do we want them, the visual? That's what I'm thinking. Maybe we should do a little more, dive a little deeper to the cause and effect of what we put into place here. Because I'm not so sure that the container that's in a place that's screened is necessarily a bad thing. I think it might have its purpose. I think where it's placed and how it's screened is what kind of changes it. Same thing I look with the tents. It seems like, okay, we've gone down, we've eliminated tents, and then except for everyone, the beach, we want to do it. We want to do it for on the historical society when they have the, the farmer's market, and we keep carving out where it is. So I just don't know, or if we say about you refer to, Keith, as the shade, I mean, same thing applies to anyone who's getting a bicycle, whether it be down on Old Harbor or on Weldon's Way.
Yeah.
They're out of the, from that end of it. So I just don't know if we should just dig in a little bit deeper. And
Yeah.
that's all.
Good.
Well, I mean, I would counter that by saying if it's currently not allowed and somebody is using, well, then there is a path for that. They can build a building. So you can build a garage and store your things in it. There's a process for that. You can go to the building department and, if you're in the historic district, there's a path for that. So including for the town, but we're on that path at the fire department because we're in the process of planning a new building. So.
We're not on that path as far as it's not prohibited, whether everyone.
Oh, no. The town itself would have to apply for a temporary relief from this. Well, probably already we need to apply for a temporary relief of what we have going on.
Right.
Right. And I'm not excusing that, right? But because we're aware of that, but as you say, not the only instance of this. And I don't think that the bar we should say is like, oh, well, if you can't see it. Because I think, that was my issue at the last meeting we had to discuss the screening downtown. Because that screening was a failure. Now, since that meeting, they have improved the screening, but I think what it has proven to me, at least, is that screening isn't the answer, because the wind and the weather out here, screen with what? Like, what's going to screen that from your neighbors? And do your neighbors want to be looking at that? And is that fair to your neighbors when it says I think it's in our current ordinance that you can't have them. So.
Maybe there should be a path, but that's another option. So I think that's worthy of those discussions. I mean, when you're talking 20 or 30 that are out here and they're in different places, in the end result, it may be that they end up being prohibited. But I think there was more, and I think they serve a purpose more than what we originally, whether it's as a shed or whatever it might be. So I don't know. It's just I just think that it needs more discussion.
Can I?
Yes, please, Nancy.
Okay. Well, there you are again. So I still have a problem with this idea of grandfathering, because our nuisance definition, or a nuisance to the community or to the neighborhood through noise, vibration, concussions, odors, fumes, smoke, gases, dust, harmful fluids or substances, danger of fire or explosion, or other objectionable features detrimental to the community or neighborhood health, safety, convenience, morals, or welfare. I mean, I don't think a tent sitting, in front of the Blue Pottery or, or whatever, really constitutes a nuisance as defined by our ordinance. That's, one of my concerns. I'd like to see an option somewhere where, people who have it and it's not bothering anyone could be grandfathered.
What about where it is?
Hmm?
What about where it is problematic? I mean, the example, I'm sorry, they're next on the agenda would be what Harborside looked like last summer. That's what started this.
Well, I know, but look what actually started that was a fire that burned down a hotel. I
Do you
mean,
remember what it looked like last summer?
yes.
Yeah. That's what this is about.
4 different colors of tents but I would.
And that
disagree
was
with you,
that
Nancy,
was an
and-
opinion as to whether you found that offensive or not, or a nuisance or not. I think there were a lot of people that would disagree with that as,
Because I got not a single person other than when did the carnival arrive to town?
well,
I didn't get I literally didn't get a single person.
I would also have to say
Doesn't
that
look Charming or anything.
we have a beautiful, historic, Victorian seaside town. That's why people come here. And every time we do something that cheapens it, we cheapen the whole. We don't just, so when Blue Pottery pops up a rusty tent in front of their store and hangs a bunch of t-shirts on plastic hangers, and yes, I'm gonna call it out for what it is. Does that improve our historic district? Does that make our historic town cuter? Does it make it more appealing? Does it improve the whole? I understand that it improves the bottom line of the property owner and the business owner. But what I'm saying is, I'm looking at the whole. I'm looking at our cute, historic, seaside, Victorian town. That's what we're selling. We're selling that and clean beaches and open space with lovely trails. That is why people come and rent houses here. That is why people choose to live here. That is why people get on that boat and come to Block Island. If we want to cheapen it with illegal signs and pop-up tents and sidewalk, interference, people throwing goods out on the sidewalk and stuff, then that's a decision that we have to make. We have to say, you know what, we don't care. Cheapen it up. But
Molly,
I'm
I
not
don't,
saying that.
I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you. I'm saying, if you look at, let's take the Blue Pottery as an example. It was prohibited. It didn't seem to bother anybody until the Harborside burned down and put up blue and red tents. That's been there for years and it didn't bother anybody.
It has not been there for years.
Yes, it has.
No, it's been there for a couple years.
A couple of years.
And
It's been
and
there.
It has looked incredibly shoddy. the
And nobody
entire
came to
time.
the town council and nobody called Keith and said, oh my God, get rid of that tent that's there in front of the Blue Pottery or the one in front of Jen Huggins's store. They were all prohibited. When you talk about sidewalk objections, we have an ordinance about signs blocking the sidewalk. That's taken care of. We have a sign ordinance. I just think this is, I don't necessarily disagree with Bill that this is sort of overkill. There's gotta be a simpler way to get rid of red and blue covered tents on the main street.
Nellie, I'll retract the committee motion and ask for a motion to postpone. Yes,
Oh,
please, David.
yeah.
David Lewis, Molly expressed the topic of what's happening on Dodge Street better than I ever would. But when that first popped up 2 or 3 years ago, I said to myself, why do we need to sell T-shirts outside of the Blue Pottery, which has been there for close to 40 years, that building? Why did we need to sell more T-shirts under a tent outside the Blue Pottery? Now, the reason I didn't complain to anybody is because this town has a notorious habit of not enforcing rules that we do have on the books. Never mind questioning whether a rule is or is not on the books. So I think that we need two things. We need to come to the appropriate judgment. And I think Molly is on the right trail with regard to what we want especially the downtown to look like. And we have to make a commitment to enforce the rules that we put on the books. Thank you.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
Hi, Jennifer Phillips. I was at the planning board meeting when they were discussing these
Mhm.
and the storage container, Sosha Cohen spoke up and she said just a large box is kind of strange to start the language. It should be a little more succinct maybe than a large box. Anyway, just thought I'd bring that to your attention. But also, as David said, the enforcement is missing here. If any of these are done in historic district and the historic district contacts them, there's nobody to enforce it. There's nobody that will go to any of these businesses or any of these homes and say, this isn't allowed. The building official refuses to have anything to do with historic district. So to put all these ordinances in when there's no enforcement, I think is the cart before the horse.
But I'm going to ask Amy, do you think that that's true?
I think as a zoning ordinance, we have a zoning enforcement officer who will do her best to address the concerns that exist. Yes, is there a capacity and constraint issue? Absolutely. But I think we're trying to do better with that than historically.
Thanks.
So is it possible to just, if we do continue this, to get some enforcement for the ones that are there now without a 2-page ordinance covering, colored tents on the beach?
So
I'm not making light of it, Molly, and I'm not saying that anything is necessarily, not objectionable. But I do think that this is a massive reaction to a fire on the main street that, that hopefully will, within the next year and a half, have another hotel up there looking as Victorian as ever.
This isn't only about, I think you're misunderstanding that, yeah, that looked, as Keith said, terrible last year. And literally nobody in town was like, that looks great. We should do that in more places.
Nobody says anything is great.
We did start doing that in more places. So this, I think, is not a massive overreaction. I think this is behind, this is late in coming. And could have been done before the harbor side. And if Tristan is going to remove his motion, then I'll make a motion.
Well, there's a motion on the floor. You should ask if there's a second, Keith, and then there's discussion.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you. Tristan. What was your?
My motion was to table this, because it sounds like we need to work on this a little bit more. A lot of the other members have brought up valid points. I don't think the document's finished yet. In any means, I'd like to explore.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
I think Molly and I are the only two who are ready to vote for this tonight. I think it would be worthwhile to continue this to a meeting in, what do we have in mid-April? I'll make a commitment to work with you and Nancy, and I have to be careful about that, but I think we could get there. Is my.
Oh,
I'm gonna second his motion because we're out of order here. He has a motion. The way it goes is usually a second to the motion and then discussion.
Oh, I know how it works. I'm trying to
Okay,
resolve it.
But we're not doing it. We're not following how.
I'm just trying to resolve it. Oh, thank you. So you're seconding
Yes,
the
the
motion?
second
Great.
motion, so we can have discussion.
Great.
Can I ask another question of Karen? Sorry. Do we have to have, under these new ordinance regulated. Do we have to have performance standards? Does that whole Article 5, performance standards have to be part of any ordinance on this basis?
Broadly speaking, no. You don't. But the way that this particular ordinance is set up, it says in broad terms that what is generally prohibited is allowed under certain very specific listed instances. And then only if in those instances they comply with that performance standard 519. Yeah.
So we have to have that, because I was thinking if we eliminated, this is just going in the future, tents in compliance with 519, complicates things, because the compliance with 519 brings the neutral color and all that.
It is an additional layer. That's correct. And you
do
could
have to have it, or we don't have to have it.
You have the power to adopt and amend your ordinance as you see fit.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So Karen, could I ask you really quick too? I had a question about the catering operations and weddings, right? So, and you had said to me that just what you said to Nancy, right? Like that. So that means if someone was having a wedding or an event, that the tent goes up for that event, or they can leave up. The person who sent the question to me was asking if they could just leave the tent up all the time.
So again, if you work through the way the ordinance reads, all tents are prohibited unless they are specifically allowed. Tents for weddings and private parties are allowed. They do then have to comply with section 519, which are the performance standards. That's just the way the draft reads now.
Okay.
So as long as it's a neutral
So-
color, they're fine.
I would, oh, but I can't because Tristan hasn't, I would like to make a change to this. So,
No, let's vote on
Can
the motion.
well, before we vote, can I say, I'm not disagreeing with you, Molly, that we need to do something. I just think I'm not comfortable with the way this is written, because I think if this were passed tonight, we have a number of violations out there that there's no way are going to be enforced, and at least certainly right away with it. And I don't know that, I just think we need to take a deeper look into this. It's not that I don't think we shouldn't have an ordinance that addresses just what you're talking about. But I just think we need to go deep with this, because I think we're throwing too big of a net. And because each time we talk, we've carved something out, of this. And so I think we need to vet it more. And I particularly, the tents are one thing, because like I said, if we exclude, for the shade and stuff, then listen, everything can continue as it is and go along.
but we
My
didn't,
other big
we
concern.
didn't vote on that,
What's that?
but we didn't vote.
No,
on
I'm
that.
saying, but if we did, but my other concern is on the containers, because there's a big cause and effect here. There's a lot more than that there should be, and we should decide, hey, yes, we agree we shouldn't have any, or there should be a path. Do they have a place? And I think that's where there's some discussion, and we may end up back where this is, but I don't think that's been vetted out. I don't think that I didn't have a grasp of how many people use these on the island in different places. And in some of the places that I've seen, they make sense, whether it's a shed or whatever it might be. So I think that's where the just discussion. So I get concerned with the way this ordinance is written. I'm not saying.
So
we
you're
should put
concerned
off and
about
not
the
do it.
way it's written or the timing, that it's
I-
a
I
too short a
don't
time
like the way
frame for people?
I don't like the way this is written. I think we need to go back and say, what is exactly we're trying to accomplish? And then have it written so it addresses exactly that. I think we've kind of worked backwards because, and Keith is right, the issue kind of got raised up because of the harbor side. I'd like us to take a deeper look with that aside and to say, okay, where is their problem? Where isn't their problem?
Right, but this is the hearing, so I would be interested in hearing what changes you'd like to make. I have a change I would like to make.
I'm not, my changes would be to relook at the entire document. And I'm not, I think in order to do that, we need to have a discussion of what the problem actually is. And I don't think we've vetted that fully out. So, you know, if there's, you're saying there should be no containers on the island whatsoever, no matter what?
I didn't say that.
No, I'm asking. I said, well, that's our question. So if it is, then there's a path we go in it, or should there be the containers, but there should be a path that it can be made, so you can apply to have it or whatever it might be. I think we need to discuss that.
That's in here.
So this is a very important discussion, and here's why. Initially, when the request came to the planning board, the request was very broad. We need a tent ordinance. So this is the process. This is the process working. You have been presented with something, and now there are a lot of ideas that are bubbling up. And as a town council, you're absolutely right. The goal here is to make sure that you are acting as a body to prohibit and allow things as you see fit. So with that in mind, my advice to you is you have a couple of options. You can certainly continue the matter for further discussion. The purpose of that discussion would be to help the planning board then go back and recreate something, change it, get it more in line with what the council has in mind. That's one option. The other option is to simply send it back to the planning board to kind of look at it. My concern with that would be that I'm not sure that there is enough now for the members to know what it is the council really is trying to accomplish here. So that I think are a couple of options that you have, either, you know, maybe continuing the matter, having a further discussion, or the other option is if you can make smaller tweaks to the ordinance that you like to pass it, you can also do that. I do want to let you know that typically how it's done is if there are substantive changes, you want to consider sending it back to the planning board just so that they can run it through and make sure there's no issues with the comprehensive plan, other things to the zoning ordinance. And your planner is on tonight if you have any questions for him as well.
Thank you, Karen.
I have a question of that. So one of the items that I've gotten, I mean, this is like, I'm not sure what the feedback you've gotten is because you haven't said.
Okay.
So, but a lot of the feedback I got was about beach tents. Oddly enough, people who don't want gigantic beach tents, right? But I would say that in that particular instance, I mean, are we going to send Paul and his guys trudging down to the beach 4 times a day to tell people their tents are too big? Like that really does seem to be the thing I would remove at the risk of disappointing several people who talk to me about oversized beach tents. But because it does seem like, you know, historic district, you drive through town, you can look at a tent, decide whether it's the right color, whether they had a permit, all of that, right? But going down to the beach on a busy Saturday, it just, that really does seem like a bridge too far for me. So I would be in favor of removing the beach tents from.
The exemption,
from-
because they're already,
Right, in C, right?
so that's, those are the things that are okay.
They
In
are.
neutral color.
Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
but we don't want, I guess, okay, so
Yeah.
then we'd be talking about the color, right? Like,
Right.
we're not gonna require beach tents to be white.
White,
I don't know where you'd ever find one, right? So how do we do that? That would be one of my, I know it's a silly thing, but that seems to be the thing a lot of people have talked to me about with this. The other thing
Is it, I'm sorry, is the color?
is, no, just.
The personal, they don't like.
Can
Can I just add one thing
How do you
about
solve that problem?
beach tents? Sorry.
Hi, Peter.
Hello. This has been very helpful for me. I did not work on the original ordinance, but did help the planning board with their review of a draft. But I just wanted to chime in about the beach tents. I'm not very familiar with this, but my understanding is that under zoning, the property owner is responsible for any enforcement. So if this is on public property, I think it'd be tricky to enforce beach tents. If it's beach tents on private property, I think that's a different matter.
Thank you.
Okay. The other thing is, so like I said, I sent this out to as many business owners as I could. And the only feedback I got was the question about catering that I forwarded to you. And the person who said they were applying to put up a pergola. So I guess I'm just thinking, have you gotten more negative feedback about that? I haven't. So
I've gotten quite a bit of feedback about the containers from different people that use them, that feel that they're a useful tool and so forth. And the majority of them that I've gotten the feedback were ones I didn't even realize were on the island. You know, so my thing was, you know, I think, you know, is there a way, you know, is there a path? And I guess we go back, is there a path that is for someone, if it's prohibited, there's no path, correct?
If it's prohibited as a nuisance, there is no path.
There is no path.
And so if I, you know, if anyways, that's.
Yeah. And I think Karen, you said it correctly. You know, the planning board got a directive for a tent ordinance, you know. Shame on us on this table for not giving a little more guidance than just do a tent ordinance. I mean, I listened into the planning boards and I feel badly about this because I know they struggled with it. And it went back and forth and they were trying to do this and that and the other thing. I personally think that this is an overreach. That's the feedback I've gotten. But I think it's up to us to take some time at a meeting, go through some things, and then if we're gonna send it back to the planning board, give them a lot more direction than they got and just do a tent ordinance.
I have to say, that's a bit of an understatement about the amount of direction that was given, with all due respect. It came about for a very specific reason
It
that
did.
you, Karen, are very well aware of.
I am, and that was the
Come on.
that was the landscape under which this conversation started. But what I'm hearing now is that there's other concerns. So, I mean, it's up to you.
And when I seconded the motion, it wasn't to table to like never talk about it again. My hopes were that we could schedule appropriate time with a work session and we can come back and try to vet some of these things out from that end of it.
All right, anybody else?
Well, I would be curious, like, so what you're asking, I'm hoping you can give Karen more direction about what you want her to come up with for containers.
Mhm.
You were saying you want to see a path.
Well, I'd like to see us as a group discuss it, and as to the cause and effects and what it is then we take that and we give that to Karen. I don't think, you know, I think Karen's done, you know, at that last meeting, we said, hey, just sit tight, we'll get back to you. And we haven't got back to you because I don't think we've had the opportunity to talk about like what we're talking about here. That's all.
Right. So they're currently not allowed, right? So what you're saying is you'd like to find some path by which they could be made legal. Is that what you're saying?
But I'd like to have a meeting that we can talk about and say, do we feel, is that something we may like to do? And, you know, talk it through. You know, and, you know, and that may be the end result, and may not, but I don't think we've had the opportunity as a group to, and for no reason, but to do what we're doing right now, to vote the time to it, to say, hey, listen, I've talked to this, what's the cause and effect? And then we give something to Karen to go forward from there. Because I think what the board did for us to get back, they did exactly what was given to them. And I have no problem with that whatsoever. We need to, if there's a change after we've talked to people, we need to narrow that scope and then go from there. And if there's not, fine. But I think by us having that discussion, we can, you know, kind of hash these things out.
So the tricky bit here is that the public as a whole hasn't really weighed in on this, right? Everybody who talked to me, I was like, could you write a letter, send it to Millie? I don't think Millie, did you get any? So Millie didn't get any of those letters from the public saying that they didn't like giant beach tents. Okay. So that leaves it on me to be the voice of that. Obviously, it's leaving you to be the voice of containers, but that's not going to work for this. So if somebody, you know, if somebody's out there and has an issue, you do have to write an email and send it to Millie, because
Well,
then
they can
no,
voice it to us and we can express
they
it.
could voice it to us.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're here and you want to voice it to us, get up right now.
Well, no, I think,
But-
I think it's, we're five people that obviously have five varying opinions. And part of our job is amongst ourselves to have the discussion and try to convince each other one way or the other as to what, what works or what doesn't.
Right, but what I'm saying is with very minimal feedback from the public, it's going to be a lot harder to give direction to Karen and the planning board. So if there is a member of the public and they want us to take their piece of this into consideration, it is unhelpful if you only talk to one member of the town council. If you send your email to Millie, Millie distributes it to the entire council, then we're all working with the same information. Otherwise, it's Nancy and Bill and Keith and Tristan and I bickering, and that is unproductive. And so we really need written.
Well, I don't see this as bickering. I think this is.
No, I know, I understand that, but I'm just saying like, it's unproductive. It's not gonna go anywhere if we don't have real feedback from people that it really affects. So if you're a business owner and you want to keep your tent, you should write a letter to the clerk.
Keith,
I don't think,
there's a question out in the audience.
yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you, Jess.
Did the planning board get letters from the public? Because I've heard a lot about this and people talking about their opinions, and I thought they sent their letters to the planning board when the planning board was having their discussion about writing this. So I don't know if they did, but maybe the businesses sent them to them thinking they were writing it and you all were going to say great based on there. So I don't know. I'm just know that I've talked to one or two people who were talking about it. I don't know anything about the tent ordinance. I just was wondering if maybe they sent it to planning and not to you. But maybe now that's being continued, they have an opportunity to send it
I guess
to the
what I'm
town.
saying is that if they gave input to the planning board, which resulted in this document, now they need to look at this document and send us their feedback on this document as written by the planning board. Otherwise, it's really helpful if we have all have the same feedback, is all I'm saying.
What's your motion, Teresa? I'm so sorry. Do you want to continue it? Yeah. Continue it. Okay. So it's a.
Do we-
You're
do
okay
we-
with it?
do we date
Yeah,
certain?
And we should,
Yeah.
if we, I would like to continue, but I'd like to, set up a work session. that we
I
can-
understand.
yeah, absolutely.
I'm just trying to get
Yeah.
the motion.
But not to,
right,
not to
because
dump it.
I
you know?
think
Do you-
tabling
do
is
you-
different
Yeah.
than continuing.
Yeah, I'll just give you, a little guidance. So Tristan's motion was to table the item. And to table it means to just basically put it on the table. You can pick it up again anytime. But of course, in this case, picking it up again would just be discussing it. You wouldn't be able to, you'd have to go back to advertising and public hearing once you come up with your new document. The other option is you can continue this document to a date certain, and you would be acting on this document. And if you wanted to make
Can we
small
continue it
tweaks.
to a work session?
To a date certain work session.
You can, if you table it, you can pick it up at any time and put it on a work
If we
session.
do if we continue, can we continue it to a work session as opposed to one of our larger?
You can continue it to any date you would like to. So you want to continue the current public hearing.
Just thinking, instead of having to advertise, re-advertise, et cetera, we can, in a work session, say, okay, what are the problems? What are you hearing? Here's a way to do it.
So it would be better to withdraw my previous motion and.
Yes, just one clarification. And correct me if I'm wrong, Karen, but if this document does make any, major.
It has to
Diff-
be re-advertised.
It has to be re-advertised.
Yeah.
That's correct. I would see any sort of further continuance as an opportunity for additional discussion. Which would then be sent back to the planning board for your planner.
Right. We're talking about the best way to do that, whether that's via table or continuance. That's
Right. But I don't think our concern should necessarily be in preserving the advertising for this, because I think it's bound to get changed anyway, so that,
trying to find the administrative, easiest way to do what we all
Karen, would you feel
really
like continuing this and having further discussion with more input from the public is the direction we should go? Or should we or tabling it and?
Based on the conversation I'm hearing, it sounds like there needs to be further direction given to the planning board. That can be done in two different ways. You can continue this matter to your next meeting, in which case you take it up again. I'm not sure if it would be more of the same conversation or not. The other option would be to send it back to the planning board and maybe members of the council attend, or that way the conversation happens. with the planning board.
I agree with Bill here. I think we need to have.
Yeah, can I make a recommendation that you, it would be my idea that you close the public hearing,
Yeah.
because you're going to be done with this document, it
Yeah.
sounds like. And then you can schedule this item at
Yeah.
a future work session.
That's terrific advice.
Yeah.
Thank you, Millie.
And-
So we don't even, I just need a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
And we do still have a motion on the table. That's the,
Would you withdraw that motion,
Yes,
Tristan?
thank you.
Would you withdraw your second, Bill? Can I have a motion to close this public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. All right.
Now,
That was
in
good.
term, well, do we want to pick a date so it doesn't just float around? I personally, we're going to be dealing with budget for a month or so. I would much rather kick it off a little bit farther down the line and then have a work session on this, but that's just my opinion. I'm open to suggestions.
Agree. Okay. There's other pressing matters than the containers.
Great. Item 8, discuss and act on request of VVO Real Estate Holding LLC for a 5-month extension of a special temporary. Hey, Josh, how are you tonight?
Good evening. Good to see you all. Just for the record, Josh Parks on behalf of applicant VVO Real Estate Holding. So again, good to see you all. As you know, we were here last month on VVO's request for an extension of the Section 112 temporary storage permit that it received back in the fall of 2024. This is for Plat 6, Lot 107. As you all know, the lot where the Harborside Hotel was before it burned down. We were here in February requesting an additional 6-month extension, which is what is allowed under the ordinance, basically to carry us through until ready for groundbreaking. Due to the conversation we had, I think a month ago today, actually, and some input from the council, we received a 1-month extension, basically with the direction to, come back with some tweaks to the fence, and we'll take it up again. So that's what we're here on for tonight. If I may, I'll just provide the council with sort of a brief update on where we are in the construction process, because I think ultimately all of this subsumes under that. I think, applicant and certainly has the goal of getting the Harborside rebuilt as quickly as possible, which from the discussion I heard for the previous agenda item, I think the council feels that way, and I would expect most folks on the island feel that way. As you know from last time, we've received the approvals we need from Historic. Construction drawings have been done and they are out to bid. I actually have with me, and it's only one copy, I apologize. I do have a copy of the bid drawings for the council. I don't know frankly if you've ever seen these or not. So I wanted to just, hand those up for you.
Give them to Millie.
Well, as you'll see, those are the bid drawings that have gone out to contractors, and stage 1 is foundation. So that's what's happening now. Mr. Finnemore, the principal of VVO, is currently, quoting out getting that foundation done. The property's been walked multiple times with contractors. The goal is to sign on the dotted line soon, and fingers crossed, break ground this spring. That's unfortunately dependent upon quotes, weather, global political factors at this point. So unfortunately, I don't have a firm date for you when groundbreaking will occur, but I can assure you that it's proceeding with all due haste, and it's hopefully coming soon. However, we were hopeful to have pulled permits before this meeting, in which case it would be very different. That's not the reality. Ground hasn't broken yet. So, we are here again seeking a further extension of the Section 112 permit for the, containers and tents as you see them now on the Harborside lot. We're asking for the full 5 months, just so we don't have to keep coming back here every month. It's our distinct hope that we don't need all those 5 months, but again, my crystal ball is cloudy. On the fence itself, since I was here last, and I'm sure you've seen, but we added posts that were sort of covering the gaps in between those white panels. We were unable to fix those white panels completely flush to the containers because winds have been pretty spectacular this winter, and if it's a full flat front, it breaks. So the panels are a little bit offset. Basically, the bend don't break theory lets the wind pass through and minimizes the scattering down Water Street of the fence. I hope that the council's had an opportunity to see what's there, and I hope you find it to be an improvement. If you do not, the other option that we're willing to we're bringing to you for your review and input is pick up those. They're essentially like a dark green mesh fabric. You see them in cities when construction happens that get affixed to chain link fence. Back when we were here in, I believe it was September or August of last year, the kind of collective feeling was that the white fence was a better look, so that's what we went for. It does have the drawback of being a little bit more wind resistant, which isn't helpful here. But we've done the best we can with those fence components, as is. So the other piece that's happened is we have commissioned, and this again is based on input from when I was here in February. We have commissioned a banner, essentially a coming soon banner, which will show people what the Harborside is going to look like. And when you see the plans, what it is, it's an artist rendering of what the Harborside will look like from Water Street, basically taking the plans that the architect ran through HDC, but then colorizing it, adding the streetscape, the buildings in the back, so it looks better. And the goal would be to affix that on, front and center on the Water Street side. Probably the corner closer to Oddfellows, just because I think when folks come walk off the boat, that's what's directly right in front of you. That makes most sense to me, but again, we'd leave that open to your direction. So that's what I have for you this evening. I'm obviously happy to entertain any questions from the council.
Are there any questions for Mr. Parks? Is there a second?
Second. Can we just clarify what date that goes through?
5 additional months.
Any other comments?
I just had one question. You brought up the, once you go to the construction, the fence that usually has the fabric in front that you usually see.
Yep.
Is it your intention to, when you move to the construction site, to do something like that?
Yeah, I think, obviously what's there on a specific day or at a specific phase will sort of need to, follow the dictates of the construction. But I think, given the reality of the location, it inures to both, the public's benefit to keep them off to keep some screening off the lot. It inures to, property owners' benefit to keep people out of his construction site. So, I think again, the contours of that may have to sort of shift slightly, but certainly keep up some sort of a barrier.
Go ahead, Mark. Yeah, you can come.
Hi, Mark McGuire. I just thought that the banner idea that is I think a good idea, but it might be nicer to have a permanent, like posted, coming soon with that picture as opposed to a banner that might flop in the wind. And I was even thinking that maybe you could even talk a little bit about the history of the hotel on that same placard or something. It just might be a more receptive sort of indicator of what's going to happen in the future. But that's just just a thought.
I don't like being in this position. I'm a no on this. I articulated this last time, that special temporary permit carries with it a presumption that you've earned it and that you handled particularly your last one well. That, in my opinion, was not the case. It is, I think there were plenty of opportunities to do it nicely. I don't think they were taken. So I'm just say that by way of explaining my no vote on this.
Josh, can I just ask you, is the banner already put together?
It's currently in the works.
So, yeah, it's a great idea, but I think it's, as long as it's in the works, let's get it.
Did we have a motion?
Yeah,
Sorry. I'm totally lost in space. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? No. The ayes have it, and you have your permit.
Thank you very much.
Can I just ask though, is a banner that's going to remain up beyond an event needs a permit, right?
I will check on that.
All right, Amy, Mona, it's your show.
So we do have the delivery of the fiscal year 26 general fund operating and capital budget for this evening. I don't think we'll spend too much time on it. I know the council is getting it for the first time. It is also on ClerkBase, and there are some printed copies here of both the budget, the narrative, the capital improvement plan, and the school's budget, which are the four major components there. I want to take a minute and thank the department heads for their work putting their requests together, and as always, for their very detailed knowledge that they bring to the table about their operations, and also to thank Mona for her efforts in getting us to a responsible and balanced budget that I think reflects the town's priorities. As way of a very high level introduction, the budget in front of you totals $20,109,124. That is a 5.1% increase over the current year. A $972,000 increase. It does represent a tax levy increase of 3.75%. As a reminder, I think we all know at this point, the cap under state statute is 4% increase in the tax levy. The largest component is the additional support for the Block Island School, but it also incorporates year 2 implementation of the New Durham Employees Association job classification adjustments, as well as the step and scale adjustments that we had agreed to. And it continues to build incremental growth, not as much as I would like, but a little bit every year back into the capital budget, which has been pretty severely reduced in recent years. So we're just trying to build that back up, as well as some operating needs, expansions, and then price growth, honestly. In some departments that we talk about, you'll just hear that the cost of maintenance, the cost of services continues to escalate. We've been able to recover some of that through increases on the revenue side. And then we really get into the details at our first work session, which is scheduled for next Wednesday at 3 o'clock. So I think we're going to start early, which is great. I'm happy to take any high-level questions, or we can save them for the details.
So Amy, you said the levy can't be more than, what's it, 4%?
4%.
And this is
3.75.
great. I just wanted to say that what was mentioned to us before that, you know, and I never thought of it until you said it, that acknowledge the staff, because the real work is actually in this document here. We tend to think it's at our next meetings, but appreciate the effort on that.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah.
So true. I have a question that is not a high level question about this budget. I have to be reminded every year what our process is here. So we do a budget work session next week. We do another one.
Yes. So on actually twice next week, we're going to meet.
Yes.
On the 26th, we're going to jump right into the town departments. So the expenditure
Okay.
level reviews of the departments, including the library and the Block Island School. So again, the Block Island School has its own unique request there. We'll also start talking about revenue to the extent there's time. On the 27th at 7 o'clock, so an evening meeting, we're going to get into community support items. So really a focus on health services, fire and rescue, the early learning center. We're also going to talk about the visitor center that evening as well, even though it's not explicitly listed. The council has backup materials for each of those community
Yep.
support organizations. That's one of those, if you have specific questions in advance that we can gather information on, please let us know. After that, we wrap up capital. And then we move to 2 public hearings, which is required by the charter. So those are April 2nd and April 3rd, again, 4 o'clock and a 7 o'clock. So that's an opportunity for the public to bring their thoughts forward. We're looking at town council adoption the first week in April. So April 9th at 7 p.m., town council adoption. Around that time, we'll also circle back to the warrant and have any preliminary discussions about warrant items ahead of warrant adoption, which happens April 23rd. That's the last day for warrant adoption, all leading up to financial town meeting on May 5th. Did I just lose you in all that?
It's helpful because I literally every year I have to be reminded of.
What we're doing.
Yes. Yeah. So thank you.
In those 2 April meetings, we really encourage the public to attend, because they can certainly, that's the time where we have the time to get detailed into what's being presented. So I think we really need to encourage anyone who has to try to attend one of those meetings, educationally or input either way.
Absolutely. If they are, especially if they're bringing forward requests or recommendations to the council to make shifts in the budget, that is the right time to do it rather than waiting until financial town meeting.
And just adding on what you had started earlier in the night, since the adoption of the warrant is going to be on April 9th, somewhere in before April 9th, we ought to get Mark and the housing board in for a conversation.
Yes.
Yep, absolutely. Any other questions for Amy? As always, I have to praise you guys for how accessible this overview is. It really is well done. As a document, I've seen a lot of budget documents over the course of my life, and I think this one is highly readable and not too cluttered up with art that doesn't really add to understanding. So I appreciate that.
Great. Thank you.
All right then. Item, where are we? 10.
10.
Financial reports. Mona.
Good evening.
Good to see you.
All right, let's see here for February. I did ask the council to, if they had a chance to review the financials, to let me know if they had any questions. Gives me a little time to research and bring back accurate info. So I do have responses to those questions, and we'll also just go over just a couple other things here. So let's see. I'm just going to skip right to the We'll skip to page number 5. We're just looking at the last part of the other town fees and incomes under other. And there had been a question about insurance and other recoveries. You can see it's all 0 there. And we did have that lightning strike. I'm sure we've heard about
Yeah.
it in prior meetings. There's definitely been a lot of money put towards that, and we are expecting insurance recoveries. They just haven't, we haven't kind of closed that out and requested those funds yet.
Because we're hoping to, and we expect a fair amount of the new fire alarm monitoring system to be eligible for that insurance reimbursement until that system is live and we've completed deployment. We're not submitting the full claim.
I see.
But we were given, when that happened, we were given a list of things from cameras to the machine and so forth that was being submitted. So has any of it been submitted, or is waiting till we have the?
No, we're making a single full submittal, but we've been in contact with the trust throughout the process.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the next page for state aid. Just wanted to touch on the hotel meal tax. So hotel tax, again, I'm looking for, I'm comparing year to date, not just the month, to the prior year to date total, just because of the timing of cash receipts doesn't give us a really good read if we just look
Right.
at the month to month. So as far as hotel tax, I'm showing that we're about 9.2% less than what we had collected at this time last year. For the cottage tax, that's the room resellers, Airbnb, VRBO, that was up over 26%.
Wow.
So overall up. And then meals tax was up 7.29%. So it's always
very
interesting looking at,
Yes.
yeah, the patterns.
I just have a question. Did the state recategorize those taxes, or is that just a variation in like how people are renting?
Oh,
Any idea?
I believe it's different how people are renting.
Yeah.
I think they're going to the third party sites.
Right, that's what I
More.
was wondering.
Yeah, that's what I think. We could try to ask the state for that
And
answer. Yeah.
And the third party collects it, correct? And they send it into the state. So as opposed to someone renting it on their own, I think the system gets a little tighter because the third party does a collection on it. So.
The
So-
turnover is probably much quicker actually from the third party.
And,
Yeah.
and the actual reporting is probably a little more accurate.
Right.
So if someone books a hotel room on a platform, does it come through as cottage tax?
Yes.
It does.
Yeah.
That's okay. That answers that for me. Thank you.
Another question from a council member was regarding, let's go to page 9, please. We're over on to expenses. And that would be just right under administration and contingency. That last 4 is 9,000. We're trying to find the line. And we're just asking about kind of what's making up that year-to-date actual, and really a large part of it, about 70%, is the lightning strike that we were just discussing over there, waiting for insurance recoveries. And then the other part would be related to the Highview Lane sewer repair.
Gotcha.
Skip over to page 12, please. We're looking at human services, and this, remember, this was a new department that we created last year. So it doesn't have a lot of historical data, but it does incorporate some lines that do have history. Ride services are the senior ride services. Originally, that was funded like through the Senior Advisory Committee, and the Senior Advisory Committee is kind of merged with or incorporated into this Human Services Department. That is offset by a grant that we'll see reflected in March. by 2,500. So it does bring it down a little bit. And I know any kind of overage is going to be covered by, you can see we have quite a bit of excess in other programming. And also their supplies line has plenty there. We're just kind of, the department's still developing and finding
And
its own.
that's one of those things where, you know, you go over and it's hard to complain about because it means more people need the service, right? It's a classic.
Yeah.
So is that the taxis that provide
taxis
services
provide
over
the
the winter
service, yeah.
for the seniors?
And then they provide a log they turn that into Allison, who approves it.
But they
Okay.
do it during the summer too.
The summer too.
Is there any, this will be more for Amy, is there, with the vehicles we got from the state, is there any way in the upcoming year that it might be able to?
Possibly, but it's a slightly different, it solves a slightly different problem. Meaning we may be able to create some coordinated loops to say grocery store, library, post office. But in order to get everybody on a schedule that's efficient to use a driver, you need to get that critical mass. It's much less driven by the individual need. So I don't know that you'd relieve the entire thing, but you might create sort of a new program that
So who
achieves
qualifies,
similar.
who qualifies and what is the ride service?
I'm going to defer that and bring you back Allison,
Sure.
who has in recent months tightened the programming and criteria around that to make sure that it is running most effectively. So I know that's fresh in her mind because she's made some changes. But we can talk about that as a group, and I'd love to have her do it directly.
Great.
Yeah, because I think the, when we budget it, we wanna, if it's gonna be going over, there needs to be a check and balance as to what we do.
And I think the upcoming budget reflects her actual expectations now that she's brought some of that a little bit more in line.
Great.
Great.
If no one has any more questions on the human services page, we'll just move to the central dispatch page, page 13. There's a question about the communications line, which you can see the significantly over its annual budgeted amount. And that is because there is actually a large part of this, around 30,000 that is misclassified. It needs to move over to the municipal alarm side. So that will be, I won't be there next month.
It's amazing. It's like magic.
Yeah, we had a little miscommunication between what we were, yeah.
That's great. Do that with some of the debt.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's just reclassified.
And then that just relates to page 18 where you see the municipal alarm system line. That's where it's going to move. That's also going to be over. But as Amy said, we are expecting that there will be a good portion of that might be reimbursable by or recovered by the insurance.
Great.
That's all I've got, unless anyone has any questions.
I do not. I appreciate your email. One thing that actually would be helpful, just for what it's worth, is if somebody just sort of reminds us next month when we're going to sort of change that process a little bit. I think it would be helpful to have a reminder.
Yeah.
At least,
And I
at
just,
least for me.
yeah, I want to thank Mona because most of those were my questions that I had. Because
Sure.
last time I said, I'll ask you in advance, give her a chance to
Oh,
have the answer.
yeah, and I appreciate it. And if you have those questions, I'm sure there's plenty of other people that do as well. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. All right, discuss an act on legislative change to the landing fee.
Hughes.
We'll shout. So we've talked about this a number of times. Amy, I'm sorry to put you on.
Where do I think we are and where we
Yeah,
might go?
yeah.
Yeah.
That would be good.
So where I think we left off, were two paths. One was a discussion about what a number might be if we were to change it.
Yep.
And you heard me talk about some of the straight math, so there's not a lot of
Yeah.
feeling in there,
Yeah.
but just inflation and the cost of the basket of goods we already define. And that put us around $1.68. Again, just for some context. And then the other thing we were looking at or talking about was what kind of reaction did our legislators have about the idea of us bringing that forward? And so we had that conversation with them. One of the things I heard was they felt very comforted in bringing Narragansett forward because they already had the buy-in with Interstate. I don't know that we will get there, but with that in mind, I did reach out to Interstate to open those conversations and hopefully have some productive dialogue. I haven't heard back yet, but taking that approach of working as partners, or at least trying to. Yeah.
So for me, one of the things that I also heard from them, and we've heard from you, is having it be comfortably defended with the data. So to me, the number, the best number is the number, I don't mean you, Amy Lynn, but we feel is defensible. And not just defensible, but that has a rationale. That isn't just Keith Stover saying it should be $5,
Yeah. So I'll join in this conversation and I would simply toss out there that the easiest path would be to double it. I think under straight inflation, you had about $1.15 or so.
Yep.
We're trying to get round numbers, make it easier to collect. If we go from 50 cents to $1, and then there's the 50 cents for the Narragansett one, we're doubling everything that we're getting from Interstate. I would suggest that you also have a conversation with Interstate. And I don't know if Viking is doing.
They still participate. Yep.
Then give Viking a heads up too. And that's, we have gotten over the years, some additional monies for tourism from various places, hotel and meals taxes and the like. So, I think doubling it at this point would be, a comfortable figure, and we probably aren't going to get any objection to it. But for the public's benefit, I will say, when we talk about discussing it with the companies, Interstate collects on behalf of the town and charges a percentage for that collection, which makes it very easy because we're never going to stand down there with a bucket and get 50 cents from everybody coming off the boat. Amy had reported that we're going to be doing much better from harbors. We have an agreement with one of the marinas. Intrastate, which is out of Connecticut, has always voluntarily given payment because we always wanted to avoid, and they wanted to avoid raising any constitutional issues and quashing anything. So, for the sake of discussion, that's what I'll put out there and make a motion that we just double the collection rate.
So
I'm still waiting for the math portion of it. That number was a little different, correct? The one you gave us last meeting? What was your previous number? You had devised something. I like that approach with the math, and then I thought we were still waiting on the data.
Sure. So I didn't bring new data, but there were two components. One was the inflation, which Nancy mentioned, from 1991 to 2025. That brings you up to $1.17.
Okay.
The second part I looked at is from 2019 to 2024. The council may remember in June, you get a memo each year authorizing a transfer of the landing fee to support the general fund. In that memo, we identify certain line items that are clearly eligible expenses under the landing fee statute. Doesn't mean there aren't more.
Right.
But because I run that memo each year, it was easy to say from 2019 to 2024, that bucket of goods that we talk about increased 43%. So between the inflation amount, which went from 1991 to 2025, and then sort of our own identified line items, that's where the 117 became the 168. So there were sort of two steps there.
So I would prefer to use the real data and do $1.68.
Can I just
Yeah.
put a footnote on that, which is I would still consider this representative data in that if you asked me today to say which bucket of goods could qualify as landing fee eligible expenses, there are more that we haven't included. So I don't want to say that's the limit of it, but it is a representative basket that we happen to have consistent data on.
Right.
In fact, there were some I made notes of that, oh, why isn't this in there? And in 2025, you'll see it on the list. But again, so there's a little bit of a footnote there about these are not
It's not-
precisely hard calculations. There is still some subjectivity to this.
So
Sorry.
what you're saying is that the number would go up, not down.
I think you could argue it may.
And just to keep round numbers rather than 168, how about 150?
But I think people pay electronically, we're not actually putting quarters into, I mean, I know in the beginning, people were putting quarters and garbage into the slot
Yes.
down at like the boat basin, right? So, but mostly garbage, but, people are paying, like you said that the collection at harbors is electronic for the most part, right?
Mostly. I do think that the idea of keeping with a round number is more digestible. I would round it to something even.
Because it's our ticket too, because I mean, we pay it for interstate. So, 150 is a lot easier to add in than $1.68. That's, don't you
Right.
think? Yeah.
Can I go back to Tristan's
Yeah,
question? What else can I bring back to you in terms of numbers that would be helpful?
Well, I like Keith, I mean, just getting back to it, I like your $5. And to be honest, and we're not all Newport, we're, what was it, 15?
I know.
Granted, they have more paid services, but do you need the number from us tonight to move forward?
I don't. This was meant to continue the discussion, and so along those lines,
I mean, what's our adjustment the last time? I mean, we haven't done this in years.
Like, yeah, 30 years.
Yeah.
since we're sort of brainstorming, this would be a resolution. Obviously, there's no number in there.
Right. Thank you.
But you can also sort of see if you buy into the rationale or the context.
1990.
Wow.
So no, we don't need a number tonight, although I did have a follow-up through May 4th from our legislators about
They're anxious to get it.
not waiting too long if we did intend to submit something this session.
Well, what do you think? Do you want to meet with Interstate and report back to us?
I would like to give them a little bit of time to have that conversation. We have a lot of meetings coming up, so if we're comfortable adding that on. we
Or
can do that.
I mean, you can meet with them. I don't think they necessarily.
Oh, yeah, no, I would intend to have that be a more casual conversation.
Just,
I think,
just a call from you and a meet and greet or whatever.
Kristen and I are probably in the same place, which is I'm kind of in the higher the better. Some of that's philosophical, some of that's data driven. That's where I am.
And I'm sort of in the category of we pay it. So, I don't
Right.
necessarily want my ticket going up $5.
So this is where, I just want to be sort of mindful of, like, we pay that too.
Yeah.
Not saying I don't want to pay it. I'm currently paying it, right? We all
50
are.
cents, yeah.
But you want to be careful that like a family going off island for swimming lessons isn't getting clobbered every weekend for $20 extra.
Yep.
right? So, I mean, I'd like to think that someone coming here for a vacation trip, that they're planning that into their expense, right? But when you're living here and paying whatever we're paying for milk and for eggs and for bread and everything at the BIG, and then you just want to go off island with your kids for the day, I think we have to be, we have to find some balance.
yeah.
On the other hand, we need to pay for these services that we wouldn't need to have if we didn't have all these visitors coming, and we need the visitors to help pay for them. So,
Yes.
But don't forget that we get almost another $1 million between the hotel taxes and the meals taxes, all that, come reimbursed to us for tourism for the visitors that do come to the island. So it's not,
right, but that's paying
So-
for other things. That's already paying for stuff. Like,
It's out of a
we have
$20
to-
million
we have to-
budget.
yeah, but it's not a direct, think of how many times you go back and forth on a round trip ticket and you're paying that $5 as opposed to, I don't stay in a hotel. So if there's a hotel tax, for the tourism, it doesn't impact me as much. I think that's what comes into when we're talking about a balance. So, yeah. Yeah. $10, yeah.
Well, no, the landing fee is one direction, right?
No, on a computer,
Well-
if you have a round trip ticket from here, you pay it. We pay the 50 cents for Narragansett and we pay
$5.
the 50 cents coming back.
But you don't pay it twice. You pay Narragansett and you pay Block Island one time in a round trip. You're only landing in each place one time.
Yeah, but if there's two people, David is,
Oh,
I think
two
David
people.
is saying, yeah.
You want to take your wife with you. All right.
Yeah.
So you'll get back to us after you have that conversation.
Is that good?
Yeah, nobody wants it.
Yeah.
Come to us, right?
No.
No. Thank you.
Item 12, discuss and act on, Bill? Welcome back, Bill. We're on item 12, item A, resolution in support of Rhode Island Senate Bill 37, enabling communities to set by ordinance an additional conveyance tax rate on consideration in excess of $900,000 to be used for affordable housing.
I'm going to ask the council to hold this
Okay.
for our next agenda
Fair enough.
for a couple of different reasons.
Item B,
Can I ask a question? Amy, is there, on this, I was asked, and I don't know if it can, I know it's anything over 900. Someone had said they thought Newport's was higher on the 9. But the way this is written, at least when I read it, it's 900 across the board. Is that the way you understand it?
The way this bill, Senate Bill 37 is written, it is consistent across the state.
Okay.
It's enabling yes or no for each
Yes.
community. Newport has previously, I don't know if they have this year, submitted a very similar bill, which I think had different numbers.
So that's the reason that was.
That's
different.
probably why there's
Yep,
confusion.
that explains it. Thank you.
Yep.
Can I just ask you, you just said you're asking us to postpone it for a couple reasons. Can I hear your reasons?
One is it's not ready.
Okay.
Two is there does seem to be a little bit of hesitation about how much support it has more broadly. And so it may not be worth the council taking action. And
Yep.
so I'm pretty much in constant communication with May 4th at this point, and
Right.
that's part of their guidance.
So basically, if it doesn't, we want to wait and see if it has legs. Okay.
In the world of do things have legs? The next is a request from Middletown to support enabling legislation for an additional local hotel tax up to 3% to be used specifically for municipal infrastructure, resiliency, and housing. Again, this is more of a conceptual discussion for the council. Middletown and some of the other coastal communities are considering putting in legislation that asks for this. They would like to have partners. And so this is really a question to the council of whether there is any appetite to consider it. Again, it would be enabling. It takes the existing statute for the 1% local hotel tax and allows a community to increase that up to 3% if they wanted. So the hotel tax that we already receive, we could increase up to 3% if we pursued this enabling legislation. For some communities, it's really a different avenue than the expansion of the short-term rental because they may not derive a lot of revenue from that. So they're identifying this as a different avenue
I
that
see.
works better for them.
So this would apply to the short-term rental,
This is specific to hotel rooms.
which are, so they're already paying whatever it is, 13, 14. when we're not-
13%.
This would add another 3 on top of that?
It would
Or
add
the ability to.
up to another 2. The 1% already exists. So again, it's just a testing of the council's appetite to engage on this topic.
So the 1% that exists is the 1% that goes to the state, not the 1% that goes to the housing board.
The 1% that comes to the municipality,
Through
not
the
the
state.
1% that goes to the housing.
Right, but the
Through the
state
state,
collects it
yes.
and then we get that back. Okay.
Yes.
And could shift up to 3.
That is the question. Yes.
Do you know off the top of your head how much we receive in the 1%?
Yeah.
Yes. I think I believe it would be another about 400,000.
So we receive 400.
That would be the incremental amount if you went up to 3%.
If the town decided to go up to 3%.
If the
the-
legislation went forward and then the town elected to implement.
I don't know, unless people feel very strongly about this, I just assume wait and see whether it also has any legs or any discussion.
I think that's the right strategy right now. As we talk about item C and the related expansion of the short-term rentals, all of these things are in flux at the moment.
Yeah.
But it's helpful to have a little bit of a sense, even if there's not an official vote on where the council may want to be
Sure.
on some of these.
Good. Great.
So I'm hearing less of an appetite for that.
It's not that I don't have an appetite, it's just, I don't want to pick a fight that we don't have to pick.
Right.
The key on all of these things is that it remain enabling.
Yeah.
That's a critical part of the thing for me. Because then Middletown can make its decision, Block Island can make its decision,
Yep.
whatever. So when I see enabling, I'm more inclined to support because I think the more tools we have, the better. That's
And we wouldn't need to act on it at all.
At all if we
No,
didn't want to.
yeah.
By the same token, in the beginning of March, I don't think it's going to stand or fall on whether there's a resolution from New Shoreham. So, I don't think we.
The
lose.
mighty New Shoreham, what?
I know, shocking is the statement.
Would you like to brief us on Senate 418?
I don't have too much to add. Again, we're sort of watching the landscape on that. And that's the expansion of the short-term rental, whether it's distributed for housing and homelessness, the existing formula back to the municipalities. The one that's back to municipalities, there are some definitional concerns that I've really been working with May 4th and with our legislators to straighten out.
Great.
So we're working on that.
Yeah.
No
And
real
this is
updates.
largely on the distribution question.
Yes.
Yeah, 418
Right,
adds
yes.
housing.
Yeah. Great. Terrific. You want to do your report, Amy?
Sure. Okay, so the town manager's report this month is a little dense. I apologize, but it's also kind of exciting in that there's a lot of work
Yes.
happening. It's not always flashy, but it is important. And so I appreciate everyone's effort to read it. There are a number of grant awards in there. They're not huge grants, but they are, I think there are at least 5 of them that came in last month, mostly around training, travel, and safety items. So those are exciting. I do have an update on CDBG since that came up at the beginning of the meeting.
Yeah.
There is new guidance after the continuing resolution was passed that our 2025 application will no longer be considered. And so the request is then back to the communities, if you had a 2025 application, which for us was for Corn Neck Road, please resubmit those as opposed to the new application for 26, which we had identified for the Coast Guard station. So my intention is to follow that guidance unless there's some strong objection from the council. Again, these things are sort of changing by the day. Yeah. But that's what's happening there. In terms of other items, URI Senior Day is May 14th for any of those who may be tracking that date. I know, I know the chief is prepared. Permitting has been secured by DEM for the work to be done at the Bluffs. Mike is coordinating that with DEM, and that will stabilize that bottom step of the stairs so that that will be open for next summer.
Would you mind coming to us to tell us what that's going to look like? So I'm just curious at some point.
I'll get Mike here.
Yeah.
I will say it's a little, we have a little bit of flexibility in the execution of that with both DEM and CRMC, which we really appreciate, which says, as you get there and do the work, use your best judgment to make it safe, stable, and secure.
Yeah.
But Mike can describe it more
I wasn't
carefully.
asking that because I expected
Yeah.
to object. I'm just curious about how they're going to accomplish it.
Well, I get it's a little bit of a do it as you go. Yeah. In terms of other road work, road milling is actually going to start next week with Lynch, and that's going to impact Pilot Hill, Mohegan Trail, Snake Hole, Lakeside, and Connecticut Avenue. So we appreciate everybody's understanding as those traffic patterns shift. The police department is aware. The Block Island Times will also have that information, and we'll make sure it gets on the bulletin board as well. So that was a sort of a last minute arrangement for them to get out here. In the not pressing but good to know category, there is a new offering at the cemetery. Mike has worked with Karen Sprague for a shared memorial stone, which will allow those who may not have a specific plot to do an engraving on a shared stone. So again, just one of those things people should know about when the time comes, and you can always reach out to Mike directly for more on
There's a
that.
lot of people that opt for cremation and do the C or whatever it might be, and this is a nice way they can do the remembrance, so I think it's a great idea.
Absolutely, yep. So that's exciting. Staying at the cemetery, they will be doing cleanup, so anyone who has decorations that might be left over from Christmas, if they could have those removed by April 18th. In the rec department, both rec and harbors are staffing up for the summer. Rec is still looking for 3 more lifeguards, 2 more counselors, and 1 more rental person, if anyone knows anyone looking for some summer work.
Just get the free time this summer.
I think most of the council knows already that the Island Free Library was recognized by the URI Graduate Program for Library Services as this year's Library of the Year, which is very exciting. So congratulations to them. And then we've talked a fair amount about this, but we did receive the State Fire Marshal's conditional approval for the fire alarm monitoring system, subject to final testing and commissioning, and a meeting of all the parties to discuss some of the improvements we still need to make of the facilities, but this system itself has been approved for deployment. So that is really exciting. It's been a lot of work, so I want to recognize Howell, Tom, Fire Chief Hobie, Chief Dean, Mike Shea for all of their time and attention to that project. Happy to take questions if anyone has anything else.
I have a non-substantive issue that occurred to me when you said correctly that there's a lot of exciting things going on, and it reminds me of a conversation that Nancy and I had about vacancies. I've noticed for years that on agendas, the town manager's report tends to be the last or second to last item. You know, we've been here since the five of us have been here since 6:30. We've lost a lot of people. My bet is if you looked at YouTube duration of time people watch YouTube, it probably starts to fall off. So I'm wondering whether we might want to, you know, maybe even just when there's a real meaty one to move it up on our agenda.
And not to add any greater burdens, but we did talk at one point about if there are meteor ones, kind of synthesizing it and putting it in the newspaper as a town manager column or something.
That is still on it hasn't fallen away. It's still on the list.
Post budget.
My question's pretty easy. The DEM derelict reimbursement, is that 100% of the removal?
I do believe it's 100%. We have been successful with that program in the past. It just takes a very long time. They only meet, I think, once a year. So,
So up to date, it's been 100%.
so far.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thanks.
It's not our preferred way, but there comes a point where you need that boat off the beach, and that's where we are.
And Amy, I had two quick things. One on the mini grants. I'm glad to see they're collecting the data. We had talked about the benefits that, but, and I've heard nothing but positive things from the ones that that, but I think that'll be helpful when we get into our budget season, if, you know, if anyone's requesting to continue with it. So that data will be help us to hopefully be able to try to continue something.
Yeah, we're just reviewing that report, but it should be final by the time we meet next week. So,
Yeah, and it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't have to be, you know,
yeah.
condensed is good, you know. And then one other thing I had when you're talking about and I don't mean for tonight, maybe we could have the next one. There was a repeater system that had been in a repeater system for the radio, the fire department. I don't know where that all stands.
I'm happy to. Yeah, no, it's high on the radar. So we've actually been working pretty aggressively on it, and have all the quotes in place for both the equipment deployment and the networking that needs to happen. We've been struggling to coordinate with the power company, who also has a project almost in the exact same places for data aggregation, but it looks like that has just come together this week. And so we're pretty close to engaging contracts on getting that.
5
built.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5 years, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, good. It's getting done.
5 years.
But there's
So the money that had been in years ago, had we rolled that over?
we still have the funding for that, and it looks like we'll be within the budget that we had set.
Item 14, raise items for future agendas.
Keith, before you go on to that, I just want to
Oh,
say.
sure. I thought.
No, this is about that. I just
Yeah.
want to say, I had mentioned this to Amy, just in passing, maybe my dear, and I just want to thank both of you for putting it on I didn't expect it to be here now, but I think it's a great idea, and just thank you for putting it on and running with it.
Okay, I'll start because we have a couple of reports from Nick and James that are supposed to be coming on the car rentals, on the moped licensing, and PUC matters that
I'm wondering, not anytime soon, maybe sometime in the summer. If we could talk about the ordinances that need to be updated. I know you have a little list, and maybe Millie has a little list. I know Nick and James have a little list. Like, if we could compile all those and talk about the ordinances that need updating and deal with super boring stuff like that.
Anybody else? Good. Terrific. Thank you. Anything else?
Oh, and
Oh my God, on the
Wire.
bond issue?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
talked about that. I have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Blah, 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 blah.
He's still working on a resolution.
He sent me a bulleted list this week.